Hey guys, welcome to this week's Money and Investing Show with me, your host, Andrew Baxter. This week we've changed things up a little bit. You'll notice not my normal offsider and co-host. This week instead, someone that has a lifetime of experience to share with us. That is my father, John. Hey Dad, how you doing?
I'm doing fine and looking forward to having a chat to you.
Good. Oh, well, let's see what we can pull out of this. So I guess the premise for this, we always talk about enthusiasm is no substitute for wisdom, and there's no substitute for the University of Life and experience that comes with it. Big birthday for you tomorrow, buddy. What are you turning tomorrow?
Well, I should be 80, and I'm a little bit wiser now after having the University of Life. I'm a little bit wiser now to things, especially money. And I love money.
Well, I'm sure we'll get to that as we get in, but I guess you can't go through 80 years on this planet without learning a thing or two. And hopefully, as you say to me, the old man can still show you a thing or two. So I guess I've had the wisdom of some great counseling from both you and Mum over the years. And let's hope we can share that with our audience today. So I've got a few areas maybe for us to focus on and have a chat. But why don't we start off going back in the day? I mean, how many brothers and sisters did you have?
10 of us in our family.
Okay.
And what's there? 5 still alive. And, unfortunately now, I'm, as you say, 80 tomorrow. And I'm not going up. I'm afraid it's coming down now.
Good stuff. We'll keep it that way. We want to see you for a lot longer. And I guess growing up, in what would have been, the 1940s in the UK, how many bedrooms in your house with 10 of you living in it?
3.
3 bedrooms, so pretty snug.
It was pretty snug and a big landing.
Big landing. Well, you used to sleep on the landing, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I used to sleep on the landing with another brother. And of course, the toilet was outside.
Yeah.
And you can imagine, with 10 people, you needed somewhere to go. And unfortunately, there was a bucket on the landing, so it was my bedroom. So you...
pretty intimate relationship.
It was, exactly, with 10 people.
Now for people listening to this, especially my generation and people that are younger, like listening to that sort of thing it's almost hard to believe that was, for a lot of people, certainly in your case, the norm. So much has changed in that 80 years. And I remember you saying to me the other day, obviously you live in the UK, you've flown out here, you're in Australia on holiday with us at the minute. When you were growing up, looking up, and what was your thoughts when you saw an airplane, for example?
Oh, I remember when I was about 8 years old, and I looked up in the sky and I see an airplane. I thought, will I ever have a ride in an airplane? It was just something beyond my expectations. But now, expectations are wonderful. I'm on airplanes. I'd like to go to the moon even.
Never know.
If Richard Branson come up and said, John, here's a seat, go in. I'd have to ask you for the money, of course, but I'd like the trip. But travel now is wonderful.
It's when you sort of think about that, looking up at a plane and wondering whether you're going to go on it, and yet 26 hours and you're back in the UK, or 26 hours and you're here. Let's dive into 4 or 5 key points around the subject of money, because I think you've been retired now for 22 years.
Yes, 22 years. I retired at 58. Now, my father always used to say to me, Johnny boy, look after the pennies and the pounds will take care of themselves. And I think it's a wise thing as well.
That's an interesting one, isn't it? Because we're obviously in the money and investing space, and people think about pennies. It's just changed. Don't even worry about it, kind of thing. And you see people all the time throwing them back in the tip jar at a pub or at a coffee shop or whatever it may be. But the actual wisdom of looking after the pennies and what they can grow into, whilst we're dollars and cents here rather than pounds and pennies, the way that technology has leapt forward, that ability to dismiss how important saving the pennies has actually been the platform for, there's a company, for example, called Acorn now, which if you do a transaction on your credit card, and let's say the transaction is $4.95, what it does, it actually rounds up the transaction to $5, and it takes those 5 cents or 5 pennies and it puts them in an offset account that effectively you can invest over time. And I guess that in the 21st century, here we are in 2022, is an example where technology now means that it's never been easier for people to look after the pennies and actually start investing them. I mean, it's just, it's the same narrative, but technology, I guess, is very different from putting a couple of coins in your pocket.
Yeah, oh, I would say so. I mean, when I was a kid, you could never imagine that you go to the wall and get money. But I can remember my mother saying to me, when I asked her for something, she used to say, well, out in the garden, there's a money tree. Go out there and pick it. But it's almost like going to the hole in the wall now, isn't it?
It is, I guess.
You know, you put your card in, you get your money.
I guess the difference is you got to make sure you're watering that tree, right?
Oh, yes. You've got to put some on the tree or in the tree, whichever you want. But no, technology is wonderful. And let's hope it goes on that way for the next 50 years. God knows what his technology is going to be in 50 years' time. I couldn't even imagine what's going to be that happening.
Well, me neither. And it is incredible the pace of changing what's changed. Changing gears a little bit. Let's talk now. So I guess, yes, look after the pennies would be sage advice to anybody, and using acorns or something like that to invest in has made it easy to do in today's world. Let's move on to some different experience in life. One of the things that I spent a lot of summer holidays helping you. Slave labor, I think it probably would be called now, but I thought it was father-son bonding time. You did a bit of work on the building site. So what sort of lessons would you take out of working, say, with timber and on the building site?
Oh, building. Oh, yes. You always measure twice and cut once, because if you don't, you can't stick it back on, boy. You know that.
Very true.
Whatever it might be a 10-foot piece of timber. It might be a 5-foot piece of steel.
Once it's cut?
Once it's cut, it's cut. So measure twice, cut once.
Now, that's a quote, if I can take that I reckon I've regurgitated. I'll give you credit for it. I always do when I use the story. And that is exactly where I heard it in the context of school holidays and whatnot, working with you. In the trading space, you think, the stock market is online, it's all in the big cities and everything. But that importance of measuring twice and cutting once is something that we drill into our clients when it comes to placing a trade in the market. So we say to them, look, double check what you're doing, measure twice before you hit the go button, because there are an awful lot of ways of losing money in the investing space, but making a mistake in the way that you place that by not measuring it or checking the details properly is probably unforgivable. So that's something that I know has really stood our clients in great stead over the years. Interesting to hear its origins.
Yes, but when you're working with other people's money as well, like their materials which they bought, and you just muck them up or can't use them, then somebody's going to lose money.
Yep.
So you've got to look after those pennies, and you've got to measure twice and cut once.
I think attention to detail, whatever you do, is important,
exactly.
Right?
Yes.
I guess, we're in a very distracted world today where you're trying to have a conversation with someone. And I mean, normally if you and I are sitting down having a yak, it's probably over a beer, which is always great fun. Bit harder to do that in the workplace, but that attention to detail is absolutely crucial. And we're in a very distracted world now with the internet and 300 TV channels and everything else that kind of goes on. I'm starting to sound like an old man myself when I say this, but having focus on what you want is, I guess, pretty important.
Oh, yeah, it's what you want out of life. I always wanted to have some money in my pocket, which I never had when I was a youth growing up. And that's where it all started. I worked hard, but never played hard. But now I'm 80, I'm not working, and I'm playing hard.
I'm sure I heard you talking to Emma, my wife, about this the other day. Yes or no? Are you still saving, even though you've been retired for 22 years? Do you still manage to save?
Believe it or not, I've never been so well off in my life. I cannot spend my pension, so I'm saving a little bit, but I'm also spending a little bit as well.
I think you're spending a reasonable, but don't forget we've got 5 grandchildren now, so I'm sure.
That's correct. But yes, I still save.
Yeah. Now, I want to come back to that if I can, Dad, because, again, we're in an age where, we've seen through, for example, COVID, people have started to save a lot more money because they haven't been able to go out or maybe go overseas on a holiday and all the different things that can chew up your cash. How important do you think that building that disciplined habit of saving actually is if you want to achieve some level of financial freedom?
Well, I think it starts from a very young age. I mean, I was brought up in a different age to you. I was brought up in an age where you had nothing. So when you do get something, you really appreciate it and look after it. And money is suddenly become your God.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's beautiful to have money. When you've got money, life's much easier. If you owe money, you haven't got any money. Someone owns you.
Yeah.
You got to pay back. So I never had a purchase in my life. I've never owed money because I don't see the reason giving it to somebody because I borrowed a few quid off of you and then paying you £10 back on it. I know sometimes in life you got to have
buying your home, for example,
yes.
you've got to have. Okay, on that,
that's an investment as well because that's going up. You could sell it and you could always get your money back 9 times out of 10 anyhow.
Yeah. So on that, I always remember as a kid, and it's a lesson that stuck with me. In fact, it's featured in this podcast to our audience, several times, and that is the question of: do you need it or do you want it when it comes to spending money?
Exactly. I'm down here on the Gold Coast today with you, and I haven't been down here for 2 years. And I was going past the shops, which I used to go in daily when I lived here, buying something. Didn't really want it then. But today, now, do I need it or do I want it? And so it's easy to walk by if you've got that in your head.
And I guess, borrowing money, like you talked about buying your house, and I guess great advice. What would you recommend if you've got a mortgage? What would you advise people to do?
If I buy to what I live in.
No, if you have a mortgage,
yes.
If you've got which is good debt, if it's on an asset like a house, what advice would you give someone like that? Would you try and string that mortgage out or get it paid off?
Oh, get it paid off. I would, because I had to take a mortgage up, and it worried me to death for 11 years. I had it over 25, but bought it in 11.
Wow.
Because I just was obsessed with work and money and get rid of the debt. Best thing I ever done.
Well, I suppose it gives you, in your case, 11 years to get your mortgage paid off, and you've had basically 50 years of financial freedom without having to owe money to somebody. These days, you mentioned hire purchase, and again, we spoke earlier about acorns and the pennies. The same analogy, hire purchase isn't so much something that exists these days, but instead, there are those buy now, pay laters, things like Afterpay, where you literally can have it now and you pay it off over 4 or 6 installments. Yes. Yeah. Good or bad thing that people can get access to money that easily? Bad to me.
It gives a wrong impression to the family, in my opinion. Children see that you just go and get it, money, don't even know where money comes from. They don't know the value of money. And that's the way they go on in life.
That's a really interesting lens to look through, because I hadn't really considered that, but perhaps as a father, I guess I've still got a lot of parenting skills to learn from you, but it's not something I'd considered from in front of your family kind of aspect, more in terms of your own sort of gratification. You buy something, you don't even want it, but because you don't have to pay for it now, it doesn't carry any value. But what you've just touched on there, Dad, is pretty smart. Good reason for having on the podcast, I suppose. And that's the example that you set your kids. So if you're free and easy with money, spend hard, die young, have a great time, how do you think that sort of moves itself on to that next generation? Is it a good example to set, or not? Do you think?
The old world has changed. It's out there. It's on the market, and compared with my childhood, your childhood, and your children's childhood, is completely different to how I was brought up, and you were brought up, and they're being brought up. Living with them, with what I see they've got out of life already in their life, is beyond belief to what you had and what I had and the people before me had.
Yeah.
But the old world is a throwaway society now. Nobody values anything. Well, that's not quite right, but values have gone out the window now. Okay,
so just on that, and again, it's interesting because obviously you've been living with us for the last 3 months, and you see what goes on in our joint with our kids.
Oh, yes.
And I try quite hard, or at least I think I try quite hard. I don't like and I don't want to spoil my kids. At the same time, I want to give them an opportunity. When I look at what they have compared to what I had, or perhaps when you look at what I had, or indeed what my kids have got, I actually don't feel the least bit envious going, I wish I had that. I'm so grateful that I had the childhood that I did because of the values that it installed in me. What's your take on that?
Well, when I was a child, as I say, I keep harping on about how poor I was, you know. I always remember me going out, my mother used to say to me, go out and sharpen the knife, John, on the step Sunday mornings, and I would be out sharpening the knife, and they used to walk by and think we had meat for dinner. I was only sharpening the knife to give them that impression. That's how bad things were. But today, now, you can walk by and smell the barbie.
Okay, well, on that note, that was what you did then. So let's just articulate this. So you go and sharpen a knife on the front steps, so the neighbours will walk by thinking you had like a roast beef or something when you didn't have it.
No.
These days, I guess the modern equivalent of that would be Instagram, where you're taking photos of stuff that's not necessarily your lifestyle to try and portray things you don't have. So I guess in a way it's the same. We just use social media now.
Yes, you're right. I mean, but quality of life is much, much better, and food is more accessible to...
Do you think people are happier now, or do you think you were happier in your time when you were a kid?
I had a happy childhood. We had plenty of love, because parents always love. You didn't hear about these things, what goes on today with families and children. Yeah. There wasn't the divorces or separations, or very, very few. And no, I don't envy that, what's in life today. With it's changed so much, but it's so accessible for people to have everything. Anything they want, they can go down to the supermarket, it's there on the shelf.
Too easy, or?
To eat.
No, too easy. It's too easy to have stuff now.
It's everything's accessible. But it's a wonderful thing that it is, but it can get you into a lot of debt because you're having something that you can't afford half the time.
Yeah, well, that's very true.
You know?
One of the things that you just mentioned in passing there, and I'd like to try and hone in on that if I can. You mentioned back in when you were growing up, you know, the divorce rate or separations were much different. One of the things that I would say, if I had to give someone the single biggest piece of financial advice, would be to don't get divorced, get in a good marriage, and more importantly, stay in a good marriage. So, I mean, you and Mum were married for 49 years before she passed away.
That's right, happily married.
How important do you think it is having that partner that supports you?
Very, very important. I mean, I don't think I'd have what I got today if it had been for my wife. I mean, I said to her, well, I wouldn't what I said to her, when I was at the altar putting the ring on, and she looked me straight in the eye and then looked up, she said, I'll alter him. And that was it, alter him.
All right, I'm gonna have to reuse that joke. I think that's a ripper.
Also, she said, I said it to her. I said, if there's any major decisions in this house in our lifetime, I shall make them. And in the 49 years, I never made one.
we might pause on the jokes for a minute.
It wasn't a joke. It was I didn't have to make any. It was made for me.
So 49 years having a supportive partner, and I see this unfortunately with some of our clients. I see it certainly with some of our friends. And I've seen it with some of our family too. And when you see someone go through a divorce, financially it's buckling because if there are kids involved or other factors,
that's right.
Financially it's devastating, emotionally it's devastating, and I guess it's kind of ironic because I'm married to a divorce lawyer, and Emma's seen this sort of stuff firsthand in her professional career. It's never the same the second time around.
Yeah.
Yet people can oftentimes think the grass is greener and make that decision. I guess pay for it for the rest of their life.
Well, I think it's the husband and wife. It's their, but it's what they put on the children. It's such scars the children's mind as they grow up. They grow up different to the person what they would have been, had they stayed with their parents. But split marriages, or call it what you like, divorces, it's a hell of a thing in life for children. And sometimes the man or the woman, you know, if it goes on, it can be devastating. Even suicidal to people. So it's like, this COVID, what it's done to children's schooling.
Yeah.
None of us could ever imagine that not going to school, a child would lose 5 or 6 years of their education and in their mind and everything.
At a crucial growth stage, for sure.
Yes.
So going back to the money and investing side, like marriage in particular, I mean, that partnership, that robust platform, if you game plan in life and planning things out, nothing happens by accident. Choose a partner wisely, and rather than just do the sales pitch and marry someone, put the work in on the back end to keep that relationship alive. And as a team, would you suggest that it's 1 + 1 is always equal to at least 3 or 4 rather than 2?
Well, what it is, if you work together as a team, and which you do if you've got a happy marriage, or you run it by the wife or she runs it by you, and you come with a decision. I suppose it's the same as stocks and shares. Because you think it looks good, it might not be. But if you have a chat with the missus about something, she might say, no, I don't think that's a good idea. We ought to go somewhere else for holidays. And after you realise it was a good decision. If you discuss it with somebody or look at it in a different light.
2 heads are better than one, and I guess if you're on the same page as a team, you can get there.
Yes.
It's interesting. So 80 years tomorrow is your birthday.
80 years tomorrow.
Lots happen.
Lots happen. Just this little chat with you. I mean, we could sit here for 3 or 4 weeks.
We might do that over a beer later on. 3 or 4 beers. Certainly. Can I ask you a question on that, if I may? And I guess it's a very difficult question to ask in that it's a hypothetical. But if you had your time over again, what would you do differently? Would there be anything? And if it was, what would it be?
Oh, I would try harder at school. I wish I had a better education. The Warriors, where there was 49 children in our class, and to learn the alphabet was a major thing, or tell the time. You can't teach 49 children in a class. But then I didn't like going to school either, because it was boring.
Yeah,
you thought it was boring. And if you could work for old Charlie Jones up there and feed his chickens in the morning and help out milking at night and get them 9pence, you preferred doing that to listen to Mrs. Bond teaching, telling you the time and all this. Now, education is wonderful. And if you don't need brains if you got education. I know that sounds a bit...
very true.
But if you got education, why would you want a brain?
So last point to finish us up on, and this is quite the departure from our normal kind of chat that we have, and it's so insightful that you're looking through lenses that have been developed over a long time on the planet, and bringing it into context with things like Instagram rather than what your neighbours think, or acorns instead of watching the pennies and saving the pounds. The whole notion of getting debt paid down and how much debt people carry can be quite a toxic thing, can put a strain on a relationship. All of those things are as relevant today as perhaps they may have been 60, 70, 80 years ago. And we look through lenses these days, of course, that are politically correct, that are, in our opinion at least, a more intelligent or more refined view. Yet the basic skills, working hard, saving, being diligent, paying attention, marrying well, looking after the pennies so that you can build up an asset base, avoiding debt. These are all skills that someone can apply today in today's world and set themselves on a arguably far better trajectory than they might be under their current direction.
I think so, yes. I mean, in my day, there was no drugs as such, where drugs now is spoiling the world.
Yeah.
No, I don't mean medical drugs. I mean...
Yeah, illicit drugs, illegal drugs, yeah.
And it's really one of the worst things in our younger generation. Okay,
so on that, Dad, and we're a bit off piece, but hey, as you know, we'll talk about anything all day long. Do you think that the amount of illegal drugs, illicit drugs that are being used, do you think that people were happier in your younger years, or do you think people are happier now?
Oh, I had a happy childhood, so I can say we were happy, but we were happy what was there to be had.
Yeah.
It wasn't, you couldn't get it. So you had what you had, and it was happy times.
And you were content with it rather than...
Exactly.
Yeah.
We could play in the roads, and just all the kids used to have a party in the village.
Yep.
It was your birthday. We all played together as friends, and still friends to this day.
Yeah.
You know, it was very happy times.
Yeah.
Sad times at the time, but happier times than they are today.
I think today's world, with social media in particular, has created this curated thing where people are dissatisfied. They want more than what they have, and they're prepared to go into debt. They compromise their values and chase things that really are smoke and mirrors. And I think that authentic life of back then, and we say back then, talking about growing up in the 1940s and 50s, it was a very honest time that was very real. And perhaps that's part of the reason why you see more people maybe doing drugs now, because they're dissatisfied or they're looking for that instant gratification. As a concluding point, in terms of money and investing, which is my gig, this is what we do here. We've covered a lot of ground, and in a way it's been a rambling conversation, but the values within this conversation I think are as current today as they would have been 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. I've been very, very lucky in that I've had a very robust and solid family, and I've had good mentors, i.e. you and Mum, and some other people that have come in more recently in my life. Yeah, we've covered a fair bit of ground in here, and it's been a different kind of conversation than we normally have in this room. Tremendous wisdom in there. What would your thoughts be on, a lot of people criticize, say like, the older generation, what value do they have on today's society? Do you think there's value that can get passed on from one generation to the next, even though we're in a technology world or a social media world? The wisdom, the values, if you will, how important do you think it is to pass that on to the next generation?
Oh, very important. I mean, the skills, what are dying is terrible to do anything, because if you go down Bunnings, you can get anything you want. It's not worth repairing. You just buy it. But years ago, people used to repair stuff.
Yeah.
But today, there's no, you don't repair anything.
Disposable society
exactly.
And pay for it on your credit card and rack up some more debt.
Pay for it on the credit card. You don't even know how much it is.
Yeah.
So
one of the things, sorry to cut you off, Dad, one of the things you mentioned, skills dying off. One of the big ones is the art of conversation, to actually be able to actually have a chat with someone, not on text message, not on social media, but actually to have a conversation with people, and conversations around money, around life, and around the wisdom and happiness that can come from seeing a bit. We don't get the chance to rewind the clock and have another go. It's done. Like life, there's no time machine to take you back. Yeah. So these kind of conversations to hear through the lenses of someone that tomorrow, and I hate to date you because you're not there yet, you're still in your 70s, but someone that's going to be an octogenarian tomorrow that's seen so much of life. It's been absolutely fantastic to hear some of your takes, not just from your childhood, but through the different facets of life, and see how they're relevant to today's world. And I genuinely hope that for our audience, our listeners, the people that follow this material, there are a few shreds of wisdom in there that they can apply and help themselves with their life.
I'm sure there will be. I'm sure there will be, like your tales and my tales, and watching my mother and what she used to get up to. Because, of course, years ago, you used to always have debt. And we always had a mirror over the power grate. And if the electric bill come in, the gas bill come in, or the baker's bill come in, there was no money. So as these letters pushed the mirror off the wall, it all fell into the grate. My mother just used to push them all on the power and pay them all at one go. But that's what used to happen years ago. And they think, I don't know what happened, but how it got paid, I don't know. But my mother used to pay them when it fell in the grate.
I wouldn't necessarily advise that as an approach to debt and bill management, but nonetheless very interesting. Look, Dad, thanks a million for sharing some of your time and wisdom with us. We're certainly looking forward to celebrating your birthday tomorrow, and we'll switch the camera off and go and get a beer and have a further chat about things a bit more interesting. So thanks a million for joining us today. And there you have it, life through the lenses of an octogenarian. Hope you found that one useful.